Hey guys, my name is Ryan, and welcome to Overwatch Central. We were wrong. We were all wrong about what this meta would entail, what heroes were actually good, and it's a huge surprise to what the pros have been playing. Just to catch everybody up, the Overwatch League and the contenders patch were all played a patch behind the live client. What I mean by that is there's a lot of changes that are on live that weren't being used in Overwatch contenders or the Overwatch League finals. Just to quickly go over the ones that you may have missed, you have the stuff like the damage fall off changes to Bastion, McCree and Soldier. Mei no longer has damage fall off on a right click. Hanzo had a Storm Arrow nerf, decrease in the duration and increase in the cooldown. Sombra had a big rework, and of course you have Hammond that was added into the game too. Not only that, Symmetra was locked out of contenders at the Overwatch League finals, and now she's available to play. And all of those things that I just went over have now become available in the contenders playoffs. The playoffs, which is a knockout stage, is basically the quarterfinals of each contenders region, is now on the live client. Don't get mistaken by the stuff that has to do with the Mercy nerf, the Ana buff that gives her target 300 health when she nano boosts them, all of that jazz. That has literally just come onto the live servers from the PTR, so now contenders is played a patch behind. So these games, even the finals I imagine, will be played on this older patch and won't include the changes to Ana, Lucio, Mercy, so on and so forth. So all of those changes I went over have been transitioned over to the playoffs. Teams have had a very short while to adjust to new heroes like Hammond and Symmetra and Sombra, to be honest. And then you have all of the other changes that may affect how they play. So this is a video just to go over what strategies were used, how did the meta change up, and I can promise you it's changed up a hell of a lot, so that's what we're going over in today's video. Before we get started, what do you suspect will happen with changes? Do you really sort of see Sombra being played a lot? Do you see Mercy not being played as much? Those kind of areas, do let us know in the comments below, and let's see if it lines up with the video a little bit. However, just as a PSA, these teams have had very little time to prepare for this patch, like a week or so. So what we're seeing now may not be indicative of what we may see in the future of this meta. So I feel like these comps are very reactive. However, it's still very interesting on how much the compositions, the meta, and the heroes picked have changed up. Like, it's very, very fascinating. So let's go over these in a sort of the patch notes order. The hit scan drop-off changes to Soldier, McCree, Bastion had zero effect. McCree and Soldier were barely played at all in any region that we've seen so far. So that's nice and easy to go over. These changes haven't really made a difference, but I do feel for McCree and Soldier, all they need doing is pushing a little bit over the edge, especially with something like Symmetra in the game now, and then it will become, you know, obnoxious and OP and must picks. The Hanzo Storm Arrow nerf change. Now this had a big effect. Hanzo is played not as half as much as he used to, but this again might be to do with the new meta that's forming, which you may have spotted on your screen if you've been watching the gameplay. Leads us on nicely to Sombra. Holy shit, nobody could have seen this. Now I know that the Sombra changes split a lot of the community. We've heard a lot of people saying that these changes were trash, and I know that there will have been some people saying, actually no, they're pretty good. I understand that, but I don't think anybody could have guessed that Sombra was going to be in this position where she was played near on all of the time. It surprised a lot of people, so I quickly want to go over why this is the case. I really want to go over the grand scape of the game, so I don't want to focus on one hero too much, but having a hero like Sombra to scout out the enemy team, to find who's in the backline, where the Zenyatta is, for example, where the Widowmaker is, having the Sombra not only going up there to contest them, but also relay that information to the rest of the team. Here is a perfect example of how quick a dive can be and how deadly it can be when a Sombra is calling out the shots. This is a game on Eichenwald with Fusion University and Toronto Esports, and you're seeing how quickly the Sombra spots out the Zenyatta on Eichenwald and how quickly the rest of the team dives and kills him. That kind of stuff can be seen throughout that series anyway. I certainly would recommend watching those two teams. It was a very close, it went right to the nail between Toronto and Philadelphia. So if you want a good gauge of how these teams play Sombra, we'll look at that a bit more. Speaking of which, the new hero that was also added into the game, Wrecking Ball. How was he used? Was he even used at all? And he was surprisingly effective. He was actually played quite a lot, not all of the time, but a decent amount for a completely new hero with a very high skill ceiling. Beast Taylor from Fusion Uni was one of the sort of main players that really sort of grabbed the reins on him and really made use out of him. I'd love to sit and talk to him on the channel about this, maybe we'll do that sometime next week. But there's a lot of different strategies and use that Wrecking Ball can have, and we actually go in depth in this in another video that should be coming to your screens in a couple of days' time. So do look out for that. But Wrecking Ball was used a lot in a main tank slot. D.Va was still mostly played alongside him and found a lot of good use in a lot of good areas. So very much surprisingly effective. Now, to finally go over the last sort of change that was in patch 1.26, it has to do with May's drop-off changes. And again, there was a big effect. She was used a lot more, not sort of all of the time like a Sombra was, but really useful for last-minute stalls or on certain areas of maps like Oasis University, where it's very closed in and having a close-range hero can absolutely tear through the enemy team if you let them. Had a good amount of use on 2CP, but mostly used for last minute stalls at the end of maps because she's really good at just protecting the point, clearing out enemies, especially if it's something like Goat's Comp, or the opposite end of the spectrum, something like double snipers, because she can be a pain in the ass to move. And finally, Symmetra, she wasn't changed up in this patch, but she was unlocked, I suppose, because she wasn't being able to be played in the Overwatch League finals or in contenders, and she didn't get used at all. I don't think this is worrying for Symmetra players. Teams may be still getting used to her and getting their head around where she's going to be effective, so I'd say that this is no surprise this early on into the series. It would not surprise me to see more teams picking her up in the future though, so don't worry about that, I suppose. So that's all of the heroes that were definitely impacted by changes. You know, Sombra got a rework, Wrecking Ball was added into the game, May got buffed. But what about the other heroes in the game that were changed in previous patches or just have come up in popularity quite a lot? So Doomfist got some changes in patch 1.25, so this was already in the game for quite some time and played in the highest tiers too, where he gained a little bit more shield from using normal abilities and he had movement speed on his Meteor Strike. And I gotta say, Doomfist got a solid amount of playtime, was interchanged with a lot of different DPS and really popped off in some cases, was one of the most consistently picked DPS options amongst NA contenders at least, so I do expect to see more of him certainly in the Korean scene. Now, a hero that didn't get any changes so far was Mercy, okay? The Mercy nerfs are still on the PTR, as I said, yet Mercy was played very, very little. She was not seen at all in these games that we've seen so far. Was picked up a couple of times during first point defenses, but really that was it. But why, Ryan? If she hasn't been changed, why has she been played so little? Well, it has to do with Widowmaker, another hero that very rarely reared her head in these games. She was only really played on Gibraltar, those kind of maps where she's going to be really good and was good before the double sniper meta. And guess what? Mercy was there too alongside, enabling her with a damage boost and the res. This of course is a big concern because Mercy is a pretty hefty nerf on the PTR, so that could really sort of knock her into obscurity if the pros aren't even playing her now. But again, this is an experimental time. She might come back in a big fashion, but also in your unranked game she's always going to be the best support, so don't worry anything about that. The supports, however, in this whole meta were super diverse. You saw different interchangeable heroes playing with one another that you never saw before. The hyper-aggressive Zen Ana lineups were played, Lucio Zen, Lucio Ana. Ana was played quite a lot, surprisingly. It's really nice to see. And again, this is before the buffs go through to her and Moira. Speaking of Moira Lucio was the main composition that we saw coming out of lineups. Both to do with the Goat's Comp, being able to rush people in and heal up the tanks, but also neither support is really diveable, so they're quite good at looking after themselves and not dying. So it became the more staple team comp that you're going to run. So clock in the hours for Moira and Lucio, guys, because it might turn to be quite meta, especially with buffs waiting for them in the wings. So there's been a lot of changes, a lot of swings in different directions of heroes going way up in popularity and some that are dropping off. So let's do a bit of a TLDR for a lot of people. The overall conclusion is that Sombra is back in a big way that nobody could have expected. Everybody was writing her off saying that she was trash, but wasn't really the truth. She was played almost all of the time. And whilst I can understand and guess that some people may have thought that she was good with these changes, I don't think anybody really expected that she'd be this good in almost a must-pick fashion. The compositions themselves were very diverse. God's Comp is kinda the staple meta that most teams are going with, but I feel that's just mostly because teams are trying to work out what to do. And God's Comp is very much like Quad Tank, you can't really go wrong, just throw it at the enemy team and pray. But there are a lot of different variations of Dive, for example, being played too. Hammond is being played a surprising amount in place of a main tank, and is finding decent success in areas that you didn't really expect it so far this early. Doomfist is surprising a lot of people with his current impact. There's been very little mercy in snipers. The old meta is basically dissipated completely. Heroes like Orisa have gone as well. And the support meta has been the most diverse that it's ever been so far. So it's a pretty interesting thing that I really wanted to highlight in this video. Lots of big changes, lots of different compositions. We've gone from Orisa, D.Va, Roadhog, Mercy is the one support, double sniper, to what you've been seeing on screen. So it's a nice big change. Teams are playing much more difficult lineups to run, but you can run a lot of different stuff and have success with it. So we're in a really good spot right now in the balance of the game, with more changes yet to come. So let us know what you think of all this. Let us know by liking and subscribing, really does help out the channel. Are you excited for seeing a meta like this, I suppose, where Sombra could be a bit of a must pick? It's pretty cool, but it also could definitely be worrying. Thanks for watching, take care, we'll see you then.